Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at some new spring items from DIOR. DIOR has released quite a few spring items. So we have their spring collection, the Pink Mania collection and so forth, and I'll have those in a separate video. But then we also have some additional limited edition items. This here is a palette in Sweet Bouquet. Mine is broken, so I'm going to be careful with how I hold it. And I have to say, typically with DIOR customer service, it's such a nightmare dealing with them, but I had the best representative on the phone, and his name was Jeremiah. He was fantastic, so helpful. He, took care of my problem right away. And right now everything's in processing through DIOR, but at least I had a representative who was able to, submit my claim right away without hassle and so forth. So it was fantastic because not only do I have a broken shade here, but unfortunately I also ordered the Sweet Iris Lip Maximizer, and that was not included in my package. And unfortunately now they're out of stock. So I unfortunately don't have that one. But I did also get the new DIOR Addict lipstick in, this one's called Rose Petal, and it's metallic. So it's actually a pretty cool shade. It's a little bit warmer than I thought. And then today we're also gonna be taking a look at the Lilac Glow Maximizer. So in the next DIOR spring video, we will have some of the Pink Mania collection, including the purple powder luminizer, and we'll compare those in there. Now, just a note, I have been sick. I had a fever for an entire week. So my skin's a little peely and dry. My psoriasis has been acting up. So if you see some flaking and so forth, I apologize, but that's why. And I am currently testing out the new DIOR Forever Hydra Nude Foundation. So we'll have a review on that after I have worn it just a little bit longer. But so far, I have to say it's definitely a positive review at this point. So let's go ahead and we're going to start off with the eyeshadow swatches. So let's take a look at this palette. So this palette, I typically don't love pink eyeshadow palettes. However, years back, DIOR had a pink Sakura, and there was a Blooming Bouquet palette. Those were fantastic. I really love those. And that's exactly what this palette made me think of. So I had to check it out here. So you can see our first two shades here are going to be very shimmery, more topper style. There is a difference texturally between the two. So our first shade here is going to be a warm peachy pink. It's a shimmery shade with slightly larger glitter particles, whereas our next shade here is going to be more of a white, silvery white kind of shade. And this is more finely milled. However, it's also more firmly pressed in the pan. So you're going to pick up less of the white with a brush than you will of the pink. So just something to note. Neither of them are so firm in the pan that they're hard to pick up, but that's just a difference in how the formula behaves. Then we have in the center this lilac shade, and you can see it is pretty much a true lilac. We have a bit of blue in there, but a true lilac, in my opinion, does have a touch more pink in there. This is pretty well balanced. It's going to be kind of like that Miss Kim lilac if you're looking at the actual bush. And it is going to be a satin shade. Then we have, I love this shade here. This is more of a purpley taupe. So you can see we have a satin taupe shade, but there is a little touch of purple in there. And I think that's what makes it really special. And then our matte shade here is going to be a soft petal pink. And you can see that this is going to be a cooler tone pink than what we have in the first shade there. It's a really pretty soft, cool pink. And this is the palette. I have to say, I really do love the colors in this palette. It is going to be a lighter color story. Let's take a look at these on the eyes, and then we have a ton of comparisons. So as you're looking at the eye swatches, I used the Sonia G Worker S brush for all of the eye swatches, and you can see that the color story is light. Now, knowing that it's light, the pigmentation correspondingly is actually decent. So you know, they're light colors, but your product pickup and pigmentation level of that is actually very nice from Dior. The formula, you know, everything is very smooth and easy to use. I would have to say this is one of the better Dior formulas that we've seen since the reformulation. This one is, you know, just is really smooth and a little bit creamier than some that I've used in the past since Dior has reformulated their shadows. And I think it's a really nice palette. Since this is a light color story though, it's not going to be super impactful and it's not going to be for everyone. But if you are looking for cooler toned pastels, this is a really nice option. And I have to say, this like purpley taupe in here is just such a beautiful everyday shade. You know, I would love to see that as a single, and that I feel like that would be such a popular single, you know, just like the beige Mitza. And that is such a beautiful shade. It is, you know, it's a pretty iconic shade from Dior. That's going to be warmer in tone than this one here. And I feel like this is such a beautiful, cool counterpart to that. I would love to see this, you know, sold individually, especially since this palette is a limited edition palette. As for product details, we have 7 grams of product. It's made in France, and we have our traditional 6-month shelf life from Dior. For me, the standout shades would definitely be that taupe and then the lilac in the center. I feel like the light, more matte pink, it has a touch of satin to it. It's more of a satin matte, but that one is going to have a bit more of a stronger white base to it. So I feel like that particular pink shade can look a little bit chalky depending on how it's applied. So just something to note with that light pink. As for the sparkle shades at the top, I do like how we have 2 different versions. One that's going to be slightly chunkier and one that is going to be more finely milled. And I think, you know, it's nice to have the options. I really like both of those shades personally, but I do prefer the more finely milled formula over the chunkier one. So I hope that was helpful. So overall, we have a light color story, but considering how light the shades are, the pigmentation level is actually comparable. You're picking up what you see in the pan. Let's go ahead and take a look at some comparisons. And I want to start off with the beige Mitza. So this is the Dior single in number 658 beige Mitza. And I just want to go ahead and put this one just right here so you can see how much warmer beige Mitza is in comparison. But look at that. You can really see more of the lilac popping through in the taupe when you have those next to each other. And you can see it's really, that taupe would be such a great counterpart. So let's take a look at some other comparisons. And we're going to take a look at a bunch of Dior palettes, but first let's just take a look at a few singles. So this is the new Chanel single in 250 Mauve Sucre. You can see this is going to be lighter than the lilac there, and it's going to be more pink. So this is the Chanel. And then the Chanel in the permanent range, 232 Lilac Poudre, which is the matte shade. Let's take a look at this one here as well. And you can see that's going to be bluer. It's a little bit more bluer than the Dior, but they're going to be more comparable. This, however, is matte and the Dior is satin. So you can see the Dior has slightly more pink to it than the Chanel Lilac Poudre. I also want to take a look at this one here from Chantecaille Spring. So this is in the Nymph Eye Trio. And you know what? I'm going to put this one right here. So there's Nymph. And let me re-swatch the lilac from Dior, and we'll do the taupe too. So we'll put those 2 right here. So here's the lilac from Dior, here's the taupe shade. You can see that the lavender or the purple shade in the Chantecaille is more similar to the taupe. You can see the Chantecaille is going to be more purple, but I mean, it's a really beautiful shade. So I think those 2 are pretty close to each other. And then this is the lilac in the Dior Backstage from Holiday, Celestial Purple. So you can see this is going to be significantly lighter than the lilac here. It's also going to be a little bit more blue. And then let's take a look at the pink matte shade here from the Chantecaille. This is the Diana Trio. We'll put that one right there. can see it's gonna be a little bit lighter. And they're actually pretty similar in tone, but this is gonna be a little bit lighter, more petal pink. The Dior is a little bit brighter. So those are just kind of some one-off kind of items. Let's take a look at the Dior palettes. I'm just gonna go ahead and re-swatch these first. Now, before we do that, just one more time, we've got our Dior palette in Sweet Bouquet here. This is Chantecaille Nymph with the Dior Purple and Taupe. This is Chanel Mauve Sucre from the new spring collection. Dior Beige Mitza. This is the Chantecaille Pink from the Diana trio. And this is Chanel Lilac Poudre in the permanent singles. So just a quick look. Let's move on to the Dior palettes. Let's start off with this palette from Dior. This is 943 L'Atelier Mauve. This is the one that has like the dress designs on it. Mine are a little bit more faded here. I'm gonna put these vertically so you can see the difference here. But you can see we've got some really beautiful pink shades here along with some purples. And you can see the pink in the middle there is gonna be significantly brighter, more of a warmer pink, but we do have kind of a similar color story there. Overall, the L'Atelier Mauve skews more pink than the new palette does. You can see we definitely have more lavender tones in the new Sweet Bouquet versus L'Atelier Mauve, which has more pink. Another recent palette from Dior, this is 933 Pastel Glow, which I actually didn't even realize I still had this one because I was looking for this recently and I couldn't find it. But there it was, right where it was supposed to be. So this palette was a little bit different because we really have, this is like a really pale white green, and then we have this lavender hue. You can see it's going to be lighter and softer, but then we have some really warm like peachy shades and golden orangey shades in there. So overall, I thought this palette was okay, but I think the purple in the new palette is nicer and it's also a little bit deeper. And one more recent palette from Dior. This is 123 Pink Organza. And let's put this one here. We've got this nice light pink here. This pink is similar to the pink in Sweet Bouquet, but we don't really have a purple. We're left more with some neutral shades there. So those are some newer palettes from Dior. I'm going to remove these swatches and we're going to go ahead and take a look at some older ones. So again, this is Sweet Bouquet. This is L'Atelier Mauve. This is Pastel Glow. And this one here is Pink Organza. All right, so here's Sweet Bouquet again. And let's take a look at this. This is 849 Pink Sakura. And this palette, when this came out years ago, this was so hard to get. And it was actually really, it was one of the best. I really like this one. This was before the reformulation. You can see we've got this really beautiful, soft, pink, soft lavender shade there. It's going to be significantly lighter than that of Sweet Bouquet. We've got these really pale pearly pinks and some burgundy shades here. So it is going to be a different palette, but it did kind of give me a similar vibe. And one of the things though that I feel like we're lacking in the new palette though are some depths of color to kind of make things pop a little bit more, which we actually had with Pink Sakura, you know, with these deeper shades here, whereas these are all going to be light to almost a medium. It's really, they skew light. This is 639 Blooming Bouquet. This was another really light palette, but it was surprisingly very nice on, you know, like I remember when this came out, I almost didn't get it because it's like, it's gonna be so light, it's not really gonna show up. But I actually ended up really liking this one for my complexion. And again, we do still have at least one deeper shade there. So you can see this palette's gonna be pretty light and it skews a bit more neutral, but we do have kind of a little bit of that purpley vibe to it. And then a couple of the classics in the original formula. We have 769 Tutu, and this was I mean, it's still one of my favorite palettes from Dior. This, I feel like they ruined it with the new version. They have Plum Tutu, which kind of combined a couple of their palettes, but it's missing this beautiful wisteria purpley shade here. You can see that Tutu is going to be significantly different and significantly deeper. This one here is Plum Tulle 159. And again, in the newer formulation, they have combined these two palettes to make Plum Tutu instead, which it's actually, it leans much more red overall than these do. These have a bit more blue in the purple and violet shades. So I feel like these palettes were a little bit more successful for my coloring. So we have Plum Tulle and Tutu. And then as we're looking at these other ones, we have Blooming Bouquet and Pink Sakura. So again, I think the new palette is gorgeous. It's really beautiful. It's going to be great for fair skin, light skin, but unfortunately, we don't have any depths of color in there to make it more accessible for a broader range of the population, which I think is a real shame. I think, you know, modeling it after some of their previous color stories and having some of those pops would have made it a bit more successful palette. However, if you have a complexion more similar to mine, it's probably one that you'll still like anyway. It would be nice though to have something to add a little bit more dimension in there though. All right, let's move on to the Lilac Glow Maximizer. I have to say, when Dior came out with these Glow Maximizers last year, I really like them. But this lilac one was definitely calling to me. It did miss the mark a little bit for me. So this is what it looks like blended out versus built up. And you can see, you might be able to tell what my complaint is. And that is that it's pretty glittery. So this is going to be a pretty glittery maximizer. I feel like if they had not had the glitter and just had a little bit more satin sheen instead of a sheer lilac, it would have been a better liquid highlighter. So as you're looking at this on the cheeks, you can see that I first put this on directly and kind of tapped it out. And you can see it really does give you this lilac sheen to your face. It can be built up pretty impactfully, but the big thing is the glitter. So on my left side, I went in and I put the product directly on my finger to use a little bit less product. You can see you're still going to get a lot of radiance and sheen from this, but you're seeing a lot of glitter. And I feel like if they had not included the glitter, you still would have had a nice sheen to it. And it just would have given you a little bit more of a cooler lilac gaze. And I think that would have been really beautiful. So I did put a blush kind of on top of portion of this. And this is one of the old, it's a really old limited edition Dior blush. And I think it's a gorgeous blush. It's pretty lightly pigmented in general. But you can still see, even with this, I would say it's like a light to medium shade. You can still see the highlighter peeking through underneath it. And so I do think that the color itself is successful. The amount of glitter, however, is a con. So just a couple of comparisons with a few other maximizers. Of course, I've got Butterfingers, but the white one in Pearly, if you have tried this one, I have a few of the Dior Glow Maximizers, and Pearly is also a pretty glittery shade. So you can see it's a nice white, but this one is going to have the same amount of glitter as the lilac. So if you're familiar with this and you want to know how much glitter is in that one, in the lilac, that will give you an idea. Now, this one here is the pink one. This does not have glitter. Oops. This is going to be a bit more metallic sheen. This is the formula that I personally prefer. So I would have loved to have seen the lilac in this without all of the glitter in there. Now, there's a tiny bit of micro glitter in the pink, but it's not a glittery product. And then this is the Westman Atelier Lit Up Stick in Petal, which was limited edition when I picked it up. But they have finally brought that out. And I just wanted to show you how the colors compare. So those are just a few comparisons there. Overall, the Lilac Glow Maximizer is a little disappointing, but I have found a way to make it work, and that is to layer it on top of lipstick. So I added it on top of the lipstick right now. It cools off the lipstick a little bit, adds a little bit of glitter there, which, you know, isn't really an issue for me on my lips. And overall, I think it's a nice way to use it. I think I'll also be using it on the face, but I'm actually it's going to be a product that I would layer because it just has a little bit too much glitter in it for me to use straight up as a highlighter. So I'll have to layer it with other products, maybe use it more as a mixer or even like on the brow bone or eyes and so forth. So those are my thoughts on the Glow Maximizer. Let's take a look at the DIOR Addict lipstick. So the DIOR Addict lipstick, this is in 721 Rose Petal. And this is a little bit different because it is going to be a metallic shade. And it's actually kind of a warm coppery pink with shimmer. And I have to say, I'm not sure whether this was meant to go with the Sweet Bouquet or the Pink Mania, although with the Pink Mania collection, everything was labeled Mania. So I figured this was meant to go here. And I feel like with this palette, it's a little bit too warm for the palette. So I have the lipstick on now, but I do have it topped with the Glow Maximizer in Lilac, which cools it off a little bit. Let's take a look at the lipstick. I think it's a really pretty shade. It's not really gritty or anything on the lips. I don't feel any of the glitter particles in there. This is really going to be more of a soft, as I said, kind of like a copper rose. And, you know, even like a touch of coral in there. The pink has some peach to it. So it is going to be warm tone. I think this is a fantastic shade that really, to me, screams more summer. I love this color for the summer. It looks sun-kissed. And I think the metallic sheen on here is really pretty. When the light hits it, you can see a little bit of gold. You can see some pinks, even a little bit of silver. I think it's a really beautiful shade. But I do think that pairing it with this palette, the Sweet Bouquet is too cool tone. This is a little bit too warm tone. And I feel like they don't, you know, they're not close enough together on the spectrum to really work well together. So I think it's a gorgeous shade, but I personally wouldn't pair these again. And yeah, I have to say though, I really think it's a beautiful lip addict. So I don't have a ton of comparisons. My closest DIOR Addict is going to be this one here, which is going to be Mallow Rose, number 526. And for those who aren't familiar, they do have the names printed here and your product details are here. So it's a little bit hard to see, but let's go ahead. We'll put this one right here. You can see this is going to be a cooler tone pink shade. This also has a bit of sparkle in there. However, you can see that the new shade, Rose Petal, has a bit more sparkle and glitter in it. I have to say though, Mallow Rose is one of my favorites. This one I use quite a bit. And then I also want to take a look at the Chantecaille lip crystals from this year. This one here is Pink Topaz. This is going to be a bit more impactful. We've got a bit more sparkle with these. And you can see that Pink Topaz has a bit more brown in it. And then we have Aventurine, which isn't really going to match up, but it's too pretty to not swatch with the Pink Topaz. So Pink Topaz is going to be closer. That's probably my closest match, but you can see that we have a bit more coral, a bit more peachy pink hue to the DIOR. So I hope that was helpful. In summation, my thoughts on these items, I think the palette is a really beautiful palette. Formula is good on this particular one. However, it is very light, so it is really not going to work well for a wide variety of skin tones, which is a shame. I feel like they could have accommodated that by just adding 1 or 2 shades in there that were a little bit deeper in tone, like they had done with some of their previous palettes like Pink Sakura. Color Story, however, I love it. and I will definitely be using this palette a lot. However, I'm probably going to bring in some of my own deeper shades to use with this palette instead of using it on its own. Using this palette all on its own, it's just a little bit too, I don't really want to say one note because the colors are distinctly different, but they're all just a little bit too light to really provide much dimension on the eyes. So it's a really pretty color story though, but I think it's best used in addition to other items. As for the Glow Maximizer, I love the color. I love the hue of it. I don't love the glitter. I think it would have been a more successful product without all of the glitter, following more of its metallic satin formula versus the pearly formula that they have in the white shade. So this is going to be pretty glittery. That being said, I'll still use it, but not as much as I had intended just because of all of the glitter. I feel like it's a little bit too much for my cheeks. And one thing to note, if you are trying to, reduce emphasis on the cheek area, this does actually emphasize things. So it will increase visibility of any like blemishes or marks or wrinkles or so forth. So that is an issue there with the glittery formula here. As for the DIOR Addict, I love this particular DIOR Addict. I think the rose petal shade is gorgeous. However, it definitely skews a lot warmer than the eyeshadow palette. So I like both products, but I will be using them separately from each other. And I have to say, I think this more metallic formula, this metallic glittery formula in the DIOR Addict, I really like that. And I'd love to see more like that in some cooler tone shades as well. Again, my closest was Rose Mallow, but the Rose Mallow doesn't have quite as much of the sparkle and metallic finish as the new shade does. So, just something to note there. I think it's nice. I like it. So I hope this has been helpful. I'd love to know your thoughts. And again, I will have more DIOR Spring coming very soon. And thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.